Thank you. You may have noticed that we moved the flag back here for good reason. We had a little water coming in. We had a roof leak, so we're trying to manage the damage. And we have in our plans to seek a new roof for the city building. It's been in our plans for quite a while. All right, the minutes were sent out. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the last meeting of September 22nd? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mayor, after reviewing the minutes, I saw no need for correction, so I will make a motion to approve as submitted.
Motion from Paul.
I'll second that motion.
From Nancy. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, minutes are approved. And Amy Kippenbrock, you have great news, right?
I have like two things. Two things just to share and inform. The first thing that I come with is vote center information. So a few months ago, I came before you, and Becky Beckman was with me, and she has joined me in all of my other meetings, so I'm hoping she's fine and not showing up tonight. But we put a committee together, we took lots of feedback and took a lot of things under consideration, and the election board for Du Bois County passed unanimously a vote center plan for this county. What does that mean for Jasper? We did make a few location changes. Everything that we made changes on, or every decision we made, was based on data from prior elections. So I say that to keep in mind how those things affected the changes we made. What does vote center mean? Any Du Bois County registered voter may vote at any open voting location. That's what it essentially means on election day. So just as you know, early voting today, any open location, any Du Bois County registered voter can vote at. So we'll just carry that through on election day because of this change. Our location changes. In Ferdinand, we moved from the event center to the YMCA. We did that because we voted at a library and the event center on the Saturdays before for early voting, and then at the event center for election day. The YMCA reached out to us and said, hey, it would work out really well for them. And it works out for us for internet and for simplicity in telling you this is a place we'll vote in Ferdinand, no matter when it's voting. In Du Bois, we moved from their middle school to the new Du Bois Ruritan Park. Those are the outer lying areas, but where did we move in Jasper? We did previously vote at the Armory and at the Hobbig Center, and we also voted out at the Art Center. We will no longer vote at those locations, but we will vote at the Cultural Center in the atrium space. I think it's a perfect fit for both sides. For the arts program to host us in one location is good, but really when we looked at who turns out on election day, the Hobbig Center and the Art Center was the lowest percentage of voter turnout. I think that's because we have great voter turnout for early voting. I mean, as countywide, we have a very high success rate for early voting. But when you looked at election day at the sites and when people turned out to vote, those were two of the lowest turnout locations. Again, precinct-specific voting. So in the new year, when we vote, we'll vote at the atrium, at the Cultural Center, and it'll be anybody in Du Bois County. So we will closely watch who shows up and where they show up at. I think there's people that work in Jasper that maybe live in a different part of the county. It may be more convenient for them to vote in Jasper on election day.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, it definitely, we will see a shift in where people turn out to vote. And we will review and what worked really well and what didn't work well, and if we need to make changes, we can do that. Again, if we make any changes, it has to be unanimous to our election board. Election board consists of the clerk is the secretary. There's a Democrat member and a Republican member. It's a 3-member board, and it has to be unanimous before we can make any changes to that board or to the vote center plan. So two questions that came out of the result is, one, how are you going to guarantee somebody doesn't vote twice? That was the #1 question when we asked for feedback from our approved plan. And no new equipment, so everything that you know today when you go in to vote will still be there at your open location. You'll check in on a poll pad. It's essentially an iPad. If you try to check in twice or you try to vote by mail and then decide you want to go vote in person, that will alert the poll worker. That's nothing new. That's the way it's been in the past. As a great example, last year a lot of people thought they wanted to vote by mail. And then we got a little closer to the election and they said, no, I want to go in person. So when they would check in, we would say, well, it looks like you've already asked to vote by mail and we mailed you a ballot. So they have to surrender that ballot if that was the circumstance or the thing that we were dealing with at the time. There's a process for every situation, but the poll pad will alert the poll worker that something has already happened. So nobody's going to get to vote twice. They weren't supposed to be voting twice before. We have the same equipment, so nothing new for our poll workers. We will increase our equipment. So we had machines at the Hobbig Center and we had machines at VUJC or at the Art Center. And we know how many machines are allocated to those locations. So we will have an increased number of machines at the one cultural center as a reaction to what we're doing. We have more poll workers at that location as well. We can shift, because we've downsized by one location, we can shift a few machines in other places as well. So we'll have more machines at the Jasper Middle School, more poll workers at the Jasper Middle School. We did through this process, we found that we wanted, they're called election sheriffs. They're more poll workers that are designated for that type of work. They are there for security purposes. It's a great fit because the school really said, we talked about the traffic flow since the elementary school is out there and how we should be handling that situation, because we don't want voters walking across the parking lot when there's lots of people dropping off their kids and causing any kind of issues. We haven't had any issues, but we wanted to talk about it. So their school resource officer will deal with the traffic side of things, but we'll dedicate 2 new poll workers that are election sheriffs. They are off-duty law enforcement officers, and they'll be inside the school. It's mainly because it's a school. Prevent anybody from interacting and going beyond the gym and resolving any issues that may come up. Again, no issues have been had in the past. It's just a preventative measure to keep it where it should be. So I did bring an official copy of our vote center plan, so you may have that and review it if you need it. It's also available on the county website. Another thing that came out of the study committee was how do we educate people about voting and where they can vote. So we have a flyer. We have one side is English and one side is Spanish. We've already partnered with schools and churches and lots of organizations that will help share this flyer. The media is great in helping us share that as well. So you'll see it more and more. I did bring a few copies for you tonight. If you want more copies, I have some printed already, or I'm happy to email it with you. If you want to hang it for your visitors in your city hall building, we'd like that. But anything you can do to help us get the word out, talk to your family and friends when it comes closer to election. In case anybody likes to count down things, it's only 195 days to the primary. So just pass the word. I think vote centers is going to be a great thing for our community, and it just really opens up for convenience. So any questions on vote centers?
Amy, will you have signs up at the prior?
That's a great question. Yes, we will have. We had last year we moved from the National Guard Armory to the Hobbig Center. We've used both of those locations for voting in the past, but we did put signs up at the Armory to point people in the right direction. So I don't know the exact wording because they can go anywhere, but we will put signs up at those locations that we're not going to be voting at. I think that's going to happen. Somebody's going to pull up over there because they're, it's time to vote. I'm going to go to my place. And maybe they didn't really think about it when they heard it on the radio before. Yep.
Mail-in voting, how popular is that yet?
Last year it was very popular just because of the pandemic that we're experiencing. It was probably, I don't have the percentages or the information in front of me today. It obviously was probably, if I had to guess, 50% more last year than we've ever dealt with in the past. but it wasn't anything that we weren't prepared and able to handle. We ran our process the exact same as we have in years past. We just added a few more people to count those ballots on Election Day. We are not a large county. I mean, Marion County had 500 people counting ballots on Election Day, and we had 16. So we handled the workload at a perfect amount of time. We typically are done counting ballots by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we completed the task at the same time. So we just increased our numbers of the people that were working that role on Election Day. There is legislation that passed that will allow mail-in ballots to arrive to their office till 6 o'clock. In the past, it has been noon, so it will present a few challenges in the future, but our post offices in DuBois County have worked tremendous with us in the election. We have a great working relationship, and we hear a lot of things about the post office in national media. Our local post offices did a great job, every single one of them. The other thing that I want to mention before I leave is redistricting. You may have had this on your calendar or heard something about it. So the county met last week, and they passed an order for re-precincting. So everything pretty much stayed the same. Jasper, city of Jasper had 2 annexations that hadn't been dealt with. One was this year and one was in 2018. We added those into precincts where they belong, so we don't have any split precincts because that makes an election messy. So we kind of took that under advisement, and then the state, through the Census Bureau, gives us cleaned up precinct lines. And they say, do you want to take these or not? There's essentially slivers of land that typically doesn't affect any voter. And the county commissioners decided that we like the maps that they presented to us. We found two households that had 3 total voters in the county that were not where they belonged. They were mistakes before the census came out. So it helped us clean up a few things, but nothing alarming. So what that does is re-precincting happens first, and then redistricting at the county level happens. So you have to look at your population and make sure you're within a 10% deviation to all of your districts. And then, so the county did their job, and they passed the districts for council and commissioners. And again, no alarming changes. Everything pretty much stayed the same. So then next year, no later than 2022, the city has to do the same thing with your districts. You have to look at the numbers and see if you need to make a change. And from the numbers from the Census Bureau, you are out of deviation as City of Jasper. You have to be less than 10% or less. So you will have to make a change. I'm not diving into any of the legalities of that. Renee would be happy to help you with that, I'm sure. I have shared a lot of information with Alan as well. I have a map, a very large map, that shows every single census block and the numbers that relate to it. I've sent this to Alan digitally. This is my only copy, and I need it right now because we are looking at some precinct, maybe a mistake that we've made. I'm still diving into the details of it, but I need to hang on to this for just a short bit. But this is, we can copy it or whatever we need to do if we need to share it. If you're on the digital map, it's okay to read, but
Sent it to us.
Chad can,
He sent it to us.
Okay. This will break down. It's a little easier to see every single census block when it's a little bigger, but if you zoom in on the computer, you can see all the same details. So anyway, you'll just have to address that. The sooner you do that, I'm happier to take your information and affect our voters. That's where it trickles down to the voters, is for me and my concern. But it doesn't have to be done until the end of next year.
Do we have a map that's rolled over so it shows the streets? Because this is,
I would suggest, I think you have a GIS expert.
You dial down on a
If you don't, I can work on getting something digitally.
on here?
Yeah, I did it earlier before we came tonight. I spent about 20 minutes just looking at it, and you can zoom down in on a tight and then have another GIS screen open in the background, and it'll show you.
Is there a deadline for annexations to be included, or have you passed that?
You are past the annexations for precincting rules. We can do annexations and re-precincting any, but when a census comes out, it's more or less you have to deal with it. We had a annexation in 2018 that missed the Indiana Election Division deadline. That was when we switched clerks, and I wasn't aware of the rules and what needed to be done, and there was a couple deadlines in that process, so we missed it, and we just had a split precinct, and it was fine. It was the only one we had, but it does get messy for when your city council members want to run and they want to go door to door. It can kind of be a little messy in understanding who's city limits and who's not, and why do they look different, like a different precinct. So it just gets a little messy. So we've included that one and tried to clean that up a little bit.
So we're at least contemplating some future annexations here in the near future, and
We would, whenever you send, as part of your process, you send that information to the county clerk, Alan will, and through the auditor's office, they do some different things with it. But we will get that information when you do them, and then we can interact with the Indiana Election Division to see how we need to do re-precincting if it's something that we need to do at that time. Yeah. Any questions or thoughts on re-precinct or redistricting?
no, thank you for the job. Thank you for the job you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to leave this vote center and these few flyers here on the front table. If you ever need this map or any copy of it or whatever, just reach out to me. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay.
Do you want me to share the screen?
And we'll have to advance down there too, so I figured I'd just.
You're probably gonna lose at least 200-300.
Oh, yeah,
You have to, because you got to get your number down
528 over.
We're going
to
to
get down to 10%.
talk a little bit about the downtown revitalization and where we are as far as our plan. The working group met, was it yesterday? It seems like 2 days ago or so. Working group met yesterday, and we have some updates on where we are today. So if you take a look on the screen, you'll see downtown Courthouse Square, and what's in scope is the Courthouse Square and the arteries coming off, the main arteries coming off of that on 6th Street and on Main Street, one block. It also includes the alleyways that would be located specifically over by Chocolate Bliss in the southeast corner and by the Astra in the southwest corner. Go to the overhead view there. I think it kind of tells you a little bit about it. So what's going to take place here, if you'll notice, it's a mixture of materials. We're using concrete sidewalks as our standard, and the sidewalks, I think I read, were 12 feet wide, and that goes all the way around the perimeter of the square. So that is the material for our base, quote, base project. We are using permeable pavers in the place of the parking areas, and that is to help us with our stormwater drainage. They'll be complemented with some additional drainage, whether it's a trench drain or whatever it might be. I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but
I thought he meant outlets, so he would have or inlets, I should say.
inlet, so that we'd be able to capture in the event of a deluge that we.
And Mayor, that was one of the concerns that people had, because they thought the permeable pavers might not take the water out fast enough, and then it could back up. So that's been addressed in it, so should be good.
Also, you see around the perimeter, the parking remains very similar to what it is now, where you pull in straight when you're coming in from an entrance like on Main Street going north, and if you want to park in front of Siebert's, you see how that's aligned, parking in straight, and yet we're retaining the angle parking over by Sturm's Hardware and Beckman's Furniture. That's the case all the way around the square, and that's for the ease of parking and backing out. We did not want to lose that. We do lose some parking spaces, and we lose those parking spaces as you see where the crosswalks are. There's 2 crosswalks on each of the arteries coming off to the east, west, north, and south. You cannot have a parking space within, I think it's 20 feet of the crosswalk. So we lose some parking spaces around the square as a result of that. But we are gaining 2 parking spaces on the west side. We're going to have 2 parallel parking spaces on the north side of 6th Street. So I think we ended up with 57, if I recall. We will have the 3 parking spaces on the inside of the square that currently the courthouse uses.
I think it's actually 8 less than what we have currently today, with the 2 added ones.
We know it, I know it's less.
It's less. You might want to mention that about the no parking of the police vehicles too.
Yeah, one of the stipulations as we go forward too is that parking around the inside of the courthouse square with the law enforcement vehicles, as it's done today, that will be eliminated. There will be some designated parking spaces. We think on East 6th Street in front of the annex for law enforcement that need to go into the courthouse for their temporary business.
We did meet, we had a good meeting.
It was a good meeting with the county and with law enforcement. We met with the sheriff and local police.
Well, ideally, with the new Justice Center going in as well, there will be less of that traffic coming downtown, correct? I mean,
Don't know that it's going to have an impact on that.
They'll still be bringing inmates.
Yeah. Yeah, the Justice Center, I think, is not moving forward at this point in time. So beyond those and making those changes, we did map out and tested the route, because what you'll see is instead of the rounded corners on the inside of the square, you'll see it more of a squared up configuration. And so we wanted to test just on our own whether or not we could get through there with a snorkel truck. We had some concerns about that. And Chad laid it out, marked it, we put cones up, and then Chief Hoaxang got in the snorkel truck, drove it, and didn't have any problem maneuvering through there. So we feel pretty comfortable with that. And they also, in their modeling, were able to do a 53-foot tractor trailer in the modeling. We haven't done that physically, but they did it in the modeling. We don't want tractor trailers on the square. We have other routes for them to take, and we all agreed to that several months ago, but designated those routes. But occasionally you'll get one. And so we needed to make sure that that would work as well. Because it is all surface level, there's no curb. If a tractor trailer would get in there and if they would have to cut that corner, they're able to do that. You know, it's just that we're not wanting to have that as the normal traffic through there. The lanes, it's 26 feet across from the parking areas to the inside of the courthouse square. So that gives us 2 good full lanes of traffic flow. So delivery trucks, those kind of things that stop in there temporarily, they'll have an opportunity to make their deliveries. They're not parked there for a long time. They're there just to make their deliveries. So we feel like that's going to work out pretty well.
Is it my imagination, or is there more grassy area in the inside of the square around the courthouse, or the corners look like they were widened a little bit or not?
The corners have been, the corners have been brought out.
A lot more grass.
Yeah, I think it's about 7 feet or so that the corners have come out as a radius, so.
And then with the sidewalks around the inside as well then?
There's sidewalk on the inside, all the way around the square.
are we going to move to roundabout standards, or are we going to continue to operate backwards from?
The problem is.
This isn't a roundabout, it's a square about.
The problem is that we can't stop traffic coming onto the square from Newton. And so those people have to be able to continue, which is why.
Yield and merge. So, also, before we leave this, you'll notice on the northeast corner of the courthouse, we have provided for some handicap accessibility to the courthouse. That was one of the requests that they made. And so you'll see some additional views of that as we go forward here. You want to pull that one up or pull the next one up? This indicates some of the materials that we're considering. Now we're looking at a dark paver, particularly in the parking areas, so that it doesn't show stains.
It's hard to see.
If you have somebody that's got oil or transmission leaking, you don't want to have it stained up too bad. And then there'll be a lighter color on the edge as a border. On the corners themselves, you can, yeah, go back one more. On the corner nodes, that is, the perimeter is concrete, but then there is pavers on the inside of that. And those are those corner nodes where we want to have some amenities for socialization, for gathering around the square, making it more inviting and comforting downtown. And we'll have some images here in a little bit to show you that, what we mean by that.
And you might want to mention that, what I call like a rumble strip in front of those parking spaces before you would go into a store.
Yeah, and that's a relatively new thing. It's used for both the sight impaired, so that they can tell where the edge.
I think it's on the next screen. If you go to the next screen, it's on there. Right up on the.
Right, yeah, there you go. It's the ADA, what do they call it?
ADA tactile.
So that's really a good feature, safety feature for the impaired. We did want to incorporate as much wood as we could, but as we are kind of considered to be the wood capital still, and furniture is still our mainstay. It is probably the largest furniture manufacturing area in the country at this point in time, so I think we will retain that honor. So the wood is incorporated in quite a few of these settings. This doesn't show it, but there are water and there's a water.
Oh, that's next.
Yeah, there we go. Water accessibility in each of the corners, and it's hidden by a shroud so that you can use hoses like around festival time as they wash out things. They need access to water. There's also one, maybe two bottle fillers with PET drinking that would be located on the square or on one of the arteries. We don't know the final location of these yet, but they're planned. You can see the type of lighting that's going to be used in the gathering spaces and the alleyways. You see that in the top center. And each of the planner areas, they're looking at having electrical outlets, accessibility. So for the festivals, we'd be able to have electrical access. A lot of thought has gone into this plan. You also notice in the lower right-hand corner the shade umbrellas and what that might look like. Again, these are all conceptual, and we're trying to finalize things, but we've kind of agreed this makes sense in one or two of the nodes. So, and then the type of seating that might be in there, some lighter seating versus heavy stuff. Planners, the curb planners they have a couple of purposes, and one of them, as Kevin said, water retention. When we get a heavy rain, that curbing does act as somewhat a diverter to a drain, and then allows the permeable pavers also to absorb around the outside edges. It will have a sprinkler system in it, automated, and that is a decision we've made because we know that it's very difficult to maintain any kind of greenery, flowers, shrubs around the square or down the arteries. If we relied on the store owners to do their own, we'd have a few that look good and we'd have a bunch that don't. So we want our downtown to look good. And one way to do that is make sure these things are fed some water. The trees, we want a vertical tree, not too tall, but one that doesn't have a broad branch and cover the signage on the stores or the lighting. But we wanted some trees, and we want it to feel like it's a place to come and gather. And so they're looking at a couple of species that would work well for us. And there are a lot of hybrid type of trees now that we can choose from. And I feel like REA had their act together when it came to the ones that they proposed here, but then also just be able to defend them to the point where not so dense and vertical growing.
The other thing you mentioned is that these trees, the ones that they're recommending, don't shed other than leaves in the fall. So there are seeds and other things that fall off.
Yeah, so they would be specking the males rather than the female maple trees that
And ginkgo.
ginkgos that stink and
And they also would not be placed by the street lights, so they would not be blocking the street lights.
Did I see most of them in planters, not in the ground, but actually in a planter? You know,
These would be in the,
I think these will be in the ground,
in the areas that.
but they'll be in those planter
Planter,
areas. Yeah, there are,
curved planter areas.
right. There are some other planters, and then we'll see that in the next slide, I think. Well, this is what this is what we've talked about, basically, in the tree placement, where the trees might be. This is a new look for the front of our building. We're not going to paint it white, but you can see that the flagpoles have moved. And that's to open up that corner node. And with this view, you start to see a little bit of the ramp to the courthouse and what that approach might look like. The next one. Parking hasn't changed much, but again, this is an area where we hope pedestrians will come to. And so part of it is traffic calming. We don't really want wide lanes where people can speed around. We want them to slow down. We want them to see that this is an area that they need to slow down to. And here's a view of what it might look like with the concrete sidewalk out to the planter curbs and with some of the benches in place, trees. There's some planters that would go around. I think most of the corner nodes, if I remember right, had some kind of planter configuration, so whether it's specific to that. But you see the lighting over the corner node as well. It's those hanging Edison lights, I guess we call them. Is that okay? Yeah. There could be a fireplace corner, a place where a fire pit is put in place with some chairs around it like it's depicting there so that people would feel comfortable in gathering. And that is a more fixed hardwood seating element that they were showing, and that can be configured a lot of different ways. So there's no finalized, nothing's cast in stone on these corner nodes. These are all still conceptual, and when we go forward, we're looking to ideally have sponsorships in these areas. This is actually a swing area And this is very popular in those communities that have installed these things. It's got the shade over the top as well. We did look at shade in the key areas around the square because there is a lack of shade and what we can do to help supplement that. So, and then just concepts about what the alleyways may look like. You see all those umbrellas there? That could be pretty cool. I don't know what would happen in a storm with a wind tunnel, but it looks pretty cool. And just other things that might take place, murals, could be even some murals on the ground. Don't know yet. Okay, now I did want to point out, though, on the front side of the courthouse, there were some concerns raised as to how's that ADA access going to look given this old courthouse, and they are planning on putting the same type of material, veneer, on the outside so that it would blend in and the lines would match up with the courthouse. So if you're looking west on 6th Street, you may not even see it there. It may blend in with the building so well. And that's the intent. But we've come a long way, and we're ready to move forward with our engineering, and I know we're scheduling a technical review. Actually, I think this week the plan was for the water department to start working on 6th Street, one block on the other side of the targeted area for this project. So, when it comes to infrastructure, we're getting started. But that's where we are right now.
Does any council members, did everything get addressed in here? The concerns that you had or heard from people in the community? Do you feel like everything's addressed in there? Is there anything missing?
I do have a quick question.
Sure.
We got plants at home. My wife waters them every day. Who's going to water the plants around the square here? Is that by store, or are we going to have somebody go around and?
Won't be by store. We'll have to figure that out, Dave. The maintenance of the plants is a big deal. Having the waters is good because you might be able to put them on a timer, but not everyone,
Yeah.
Still going to have to, yeah.
I just want to make sure we thought about it a little bit there, same way with the leaves. I mean, if it's going to be leaves stuff, who's cleaning those up? Is the city street department going to do that, or is that the plan?
We actually had a little discussion about that today because of snow removal in front of stores, who's responsible, and at this point in time, the storefront is the responsibility of the store owners. And so we just need to, as a group that's downtown, whether the downtown merchants or whether it's the Heart of Jasper, what we do to contract that out, that's got to be a decision.
One other question came up about snow, because like if we get a big snow, they usually pile it up, and ROI, or
REA.
ROI, investment, yeah. Said that, what did he say? He said that
Said that permeable pavers,
will help that snow to melt quicker and move away.
Back to your plant question.
Uh-huh.
There's designed to be irrigation in the
In-ground.
All the in-ground planters.
Yeah,
planters.
I figured
But
that.
with respect to the other ones, I thought he said that there
Quick
was
connects.
Oh, they were going to use a certain kind of a pot so that it retained the water longer within those pots.
So you'd still have to water it, top it off, he said, once a week, unless in the really, really heat of the summer, then maybe twice a week. But it's, like you said, some kind of a drip system in the pot itself so that it maximizes the usefulness of the water.
And that may determine how many of those go in compared to the in-ground planters also. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are all concerns.
yeah, they are.
Types of snow equipment that's going to be, that will work on that permeable?
Yes,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, you can't take like a blade or.
You can't use your typical road blade. It's a blade design for those. But, I mean, remember that most of it's asphalt.
Yeah.
So our regular equipment will work on keeping the roads open. When you get into keeping the parking spaces open, that's where you'd have to be careful about that. And then the sidewalks,
One other question. All around the outskirts of the courthouse is city. Is the courthouse county? Are they responsible for what goes on in there?
The county's been involved in this, and we're actually going to do a presentation to the commissioners at the next meeting, so.
Yeah,
It's
Their own.
representative on the committee. So they're well aware.
Wolf does a great job taking care of that courthouse property.
Scott does a good job, and if you guys are ever up early enough on a Saturday morning, our street department does a bang-up job. They're down there emptying trash, using blowers to
They don't
clean
do
it
that
up.
anymore because of the overtime involved in that, but they do it occasionally.
The only reason I'm asking is just make sure it's all covered. I mean, I think it's great, looks great. I mean, nothing wrong with it whatsoever.
I think we've come a long way, and we have a good plan to move forward with, so that when we tear it up to fix our lines underneath, well,
Well, I think it addressed every major complaint we had.
Did.
Nobody wanted the pavers out everywhere. That was the first. They wanted asphalt. We got that. They wanted concrete sidewalks. We have that. I think we addressed every concern that anybody had.
crosswalks, we wanted to make it safer, and each of those crosswalks have now been designed to make sure that we have the spacing and
Yeah.
cars aren't going to be blocking it, so.
It's going to be safer.
Mayor, did you want to mention about the schematics for the other part of the downtown that are being designed also for future development?
Phase 2, which would include Main Street going south and Main Street going north to 9th Street, is part of this as well, but they'll be working on the engineering drawings,
Just the schematic.
just the schematics, okay? Just the schematics for that, so that it will be some consistency in that Main Street view look. Phase 2.
I didn't hear a cost for doing all this. Is there a,
Written down at 4.6 million, and at this point in time, we think it's still going to be right around there, which is what we had planned on. So,
in case anybody asks, it's good to know.
well, I mean, that's what we're planning at this point in time till we get updated, until we get quotes, because that's when it really,
And the timetable for
That's what I was just going to say.
we're looking at about 1.5 years. So we will pass through Strassenfest in 2022, and we have plans right now. Been working with the Strassenfest committee on their alternate plans. Really appreciate the work that they're putting into it, cooperation. I think Strassenfest can be just as big as it has been, and could even test out some new waters for us, so.
And then the time frame from like today forward, though, what is the plan for bidding out and adopting these plans and all that stuff?
So we want to.
Award by March, I think.
back by March.
Said award the,
So are you going to present this to the city or the county people too, somehow or another? Or?
at the commissioners meeting.
And to Kevin's earlier point, we've had at probably four to five different county representatives involved in the whole way.
Are you going to put it in the paper like or something that the regular, people can see what the plan is there?
We can put it on our website.
Okay.
Are you still going to have a public, just
We have a public forum or a public presentation. that's-
Kind of getting at was the public, some way for the public to be involved and at least see what's going on there. I mean,
Well, I mean, right now, yes.
Here right now, yeah,
She'll cover it in there.
that's right.
Peter will cover it.
And again, the details are still to come. These are still pretty high level when it gets down to it. They're going to get down to how deep you got to go with the pipes and plumbing and you name it.
But right now, this stage that you're seeing was the completed design development
Phase.
So we've got probably the rest of this week to make comments, not with respect to, as you said, depth and things like that, but based on what you're seeing. Then they're gonna start doing the construction documents based on this design.
Yesterday's meeting, at the end, I think everyone came together and said, yes, this is
Yeah.
good. And they made the modifications we were requesting since then, so.
And the reason Mayor's bringing it up tonight, we want to make sure everybody has everything addressed as we go forward, that the council is on board.
And wanted to present here before he went to the county to give them the presentation.
The Mayor also mentioned that we're scheduling a TAC, so in the next week or so, all the different departments will get to sit and look at the plans, and they've received them already, but that'll be the time to make any comments about where utilities will be located and street issues and all that kind of technical stuff.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thanks for doing that.
Good. It's really good.
It's not a Taj Mahal. That's all.
We were the ones for.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-29, which is the John Fleck annexation. It's an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper annexing certain adjacent contiguous territory into the corporate limits of the City of Jasper, Indiana. It's available for the second and third reading. Could I have a motion to read the ordinance on the second reading in full or by title only?
I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 2021-29 by title only.
Okay, I have a motion from Nancy.
I'll second that.
A second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to approve, by title only? Please read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2021-29, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper, Indiana, annexing certain adjacent and contiguous territory into the corporate limits of the City of Jasper, Indiana. John Fleck annexation.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance in the second reading?
I'll make that motion.
Kevin?
Second. By Paul?
Second from Paul. Any further discussion? I think it was pretty well talked about and all that.
Seems like we've been talking about
Yeah, I know.
it or something.
Phil wants to chime in.
Well, did you want to present that again?
You don't have
I
to.
didn't see you come up here.
Joking?
For all, I actually did present, I think Renee did for me last time. So,
Do you think you could do a better job?
well,
Yikes.
I did, when I was getting.
Hit your button there.
Push the button.
Phil Beeler with Brosmer Land Surveying and Engineering. When I was putting this together to present on the screen this evening, I did go back to the GIS. It does a good job of delineating what is the city limits of Jasper as opposed to just the jurisdictional limits of Jasper. And you will see that this is the area we're talking about. So you've got Leon and Elfrida's house over here, and then the part that has been platted previously over here, and then we've got kind of this outlying piece that hasn't been annexed. So I did want to point that out. I won't beat up everything, but I don't know if that was presented or not, so.
Renee did present that.
Excellent job.
Okay. I'm sure she did. I'm going to start subbing her out, I think, possibly.
I have a motion from Kevin and a second from Paul. Any further discussion? Not. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, could I have a motion to read the ordinance on the third and final reading in full or by title only?
I'll make that motion.
Motion to read it in title only?
Title.
By title only, yes.
Motion from Chad for title only.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Dave. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would the city attorney please read the ordinance?
Ordinance number 2021-29, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper, Indiana, annexing certain adjacent and contiguous territory into the corporate limits of the City of Jasper, Indiana. John Fleck annexation.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance on the third and final reading?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Kevin, a second from John. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Amy, we didn't wait long to get an annexation, you know. Okay, next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-25, which is our 2022 budget. It's an ordinance appropriating money for the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022. This is also available for the second and third reading. Could I have a motion to read the ordinance on the second reading in full or by title only?
I'll make that motion, Mayor. Paul?
To read by
Title only, please.
title only, Paul,
I'll second.
and a second from Chad. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The city attorney, please read the ordinance.
Ordinance number 2021-25, an ordinance appropriating money for the City of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance on the second reading?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Kevin, and a second from Nancy. Discussion. Anything else? Okay.
Alan, what was the final number on that? It was 25?
It was roughly 25, wasn't it?
$5,008,879.
I feel like it's a budget we can be proud of. I support it.
Yeah, and I did rename the bonus under the council to employee bonus. Employee code employee bonus, so I did do that. So other than that, it's all the same.
Thank you for that correction.
Okay, I have a motion from Kevin and a second by Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? I'd like a motion to read the ordinance in the third and final reading in full or by title only.
Make a motion, we read it by title only.
Chad, to read it by title only.
Second?
Second from John. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Will the city attorney please read the ordinance number 2021-25 by title only?
Ordinance number 2021-25, an ordinance appropriating money for the City of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance on the third and final reading?
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Nancy,
I'll second.
second from Kevin. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion has passed. Ordinance has passed. Thank you. Next on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-26, which is a tax rate for 2022. This ordinance contains the advertised property tax rate of 1.0830 for the 2022 budget. It's available for second and third readings. Could I have a motion to read the ordinance on second reading in full or by title only?
Only, please, Mayor.
I have a motion from Paul for title only,
I'll second.
second from Kevin. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The city attorney, please read ordinance number 2021-26.
Ordinance number 2021-26, an ordinance levying taxes and fixing the rate of taxation for the City of Jasper, Indiana for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance on the second reading?
I'll make that motion.
From Kevin.
I'll second that.
Second from Phil. Any further discussion on this?
Alan, can you remember what the tax rate was last year that we're comparing this to?
It was hang on one second, 1.07 something, I don't remember the last two numbers. And then it came down to 0.84.
0.84.
Yeah, and it will come down again this year. It'll be 0.84, 0.85 will be the actual rate. This is just the maximum, so we can get the most dollars we can get out of it, so far.
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to read the ordinance on third and final reading in full or by title only?
Make the motion to read by title only, please, Mayor.
I'll second that.
Paul, and a second from Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Would the city attorney please read the ordinance 2021-26 by title only?
Ordinance number 2021-26, an ordinance levying taxes and fixing the rate of the taxation for the city of Jasper, Indiana for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022.
Could I have a motion to approve the ordinance on the third and final reading?
So move.
Nancy?
Second.
I have a second from Dave. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by aye. Opposed? 2021-26 is passed. Next is ordinance number 2021-30, an ordinance fixing salaries and wages for elected officials and the civil city employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022. It's available for one reading only procedure.
Make a motion that we read by one reading only, Mayor.
I have a motion from Paul for one reading only.
I'll second.
Second from Chad. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
Make the motion to read by title only, please.
I have a motion from Paul for title only.
Second.
I have a second from John. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Would the city attorney please read ordinance 2021-30 by title only?
Ordinance number 2021-30, an ordinance affixing salaries and wages for the elected officials and the civil city employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2021-30?
I'll make that motion.
Kevin got it, and Chad second, okay? Any further discussion on that? In general, you know, we had agreed to pretty much across the board in a 3% increase. And then we were also, as part of this, looking at a special COVID bonus to employees. And
And that came out of the COVID money that we've received.
out of the COVID money.
I think that was a good way to reward the employees for the hard work they put in.
There were some adjustments by role in order to align to the desirable differences in responsibilities, and then there was a 6-month period of service in the police department.
It's still, we have one officer who was hired in 2020, so he's still under that old system, so it's still in there. It's going to be going next year. And then I look at the telecommunicators also to see where they're at in 2023 to take that off there.
And the COVID money's going to be paid out April 1st. Is that correct, Mayor?
That's right. The plan is that you have to be employed, you have to complete this year, and then still be employed at April 1st in order to receive the bonus. Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any other discussion on it?
I think there was also that survey, there were some adjustments. So Alan, when you provided us that copy with them little side notes, that really helped too, so.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. If there's no other questions or comments, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ordinance number 2021-30 has passed. Next on the agenda is ordinance number 2021-31, an ordinance affixing salaries and wages for the utility employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022. It's available for one reading only procedure. Could I have a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only?
So moved? Sure.
See?
By title only.
Yeah. This is a one reading only procedures right now in the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, now I'll ask for a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only.
Mayor, ask you to read it by title only, please.
I have a motion to read it by title only from Paul,
I'll second that. Sorry.
and from Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Would the city attorney please read ordinance number 2021-31 by title only?
Ordinance number 2021-31, an ordinance affixing salaries and wages for the utility employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022.
I'd like to ask for a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2021-31.
I'll make that motion.
Kevin?
I'll second.
Second from Chad. Any further discussion? Not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 2021-31 has passed. Now it's ordinance number 2021-27. This is an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper establishing fees for rental and associated cost of the Jasper Arts Center and fees for the participation and ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper, Indiana, establishing fees for rental and associated cost of the Jasper Arts Center and fees for the participation in Jasper Arts Center programs. I got a little redundancy in there, but it's available for one reading only procedure. Could I have a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
A motion from Paul. And I have a second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Could I have a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
I'll make the motion, read by title only, please, Mayor.
I have a motion from Paul. By title only.
I'll second that.
Second from Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
City Attorney, please read ordinance number 2021-27 by title only.
Ordinance number 2021-27, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Jasper, Indiana, establishing fees for the rental and associated costs of the Jasper Arts Center and fees for the participation in Jasper Arts Center programs.
I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2021-27.
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
I have a motion from Paul. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I'll second it, and then we can discuss.
Okay, now open it up for discussion.
It looks like we're raising our prices a considerable amount, and do we have some backup as far as comparisons or anything that, what led us to this point, I guess, is my question.
They did some comparisons with centers, event centers, studios, and also with our experience in, I think, cleanup, management. They're all weighed into that.
And I understand that it, it's a new facility, maybe the cleanup is longer, but these seems to be very substantial increases, almost discouraging people from renting the facilities instead of encouraging them.
From the Tim Clark Cultural Center, the galleries, to go from $50 an hour per gallery, this is $150 for the whole thing.
So essentially, it's requiring them to use the entire space. You can't just select one gallery and not all of them.
You would, if you're renting the galleries, you would rent all 3 of the galleries?
Yes.
What if you just had a need for one?
Well, say for example, somebody wanted to have a reception and have people walking around. Can't choose to just have them walking around in one gallery. They'd have to use the entire space.
I understand that.
As far as the private studios are concerned, that's just reducing the amount of months that they have, so they don't have to take it for 6 months. They can actually take it for just 1 month if they want to.
Price, then the fee's the same?
Stay the same.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah, the Arts Commission actually did quite a bit of digging into it as well to make sure they weren't overpricing it. So they had passed this.
Yeah, these came from a resolution that was passed by the Arts Commission.
I kind of agree with Nancy. I just hope it's still being used, that this doesn't deteriorate, detriment people from using the dang place.
So we have some history as to how much, or how many rentals we've had so far, right? I would assume. So if we've got that information, can we at least look, if they feel we should do this, I'm okay with it, but I want to make sure that we're not discouraging. We've got a beautiful facility, and if we price ourselves, out of the market or whatever, so it's not being used, then it's no benefit to anyone. So I'd like to, have us at least get some information after 6 months or a year, something, if we could get that, to find out if it's being used.
Sure.
And they report on each of the arts.
They do.
I think it'd be interesting to know that also. How many times are people actually renting the gallery or galleries, as you might say, and I want people to rent those and use those. It's really kind of a unique area that other communities don't have.
Yes.
I feel like they looked into those kinds of issues, because I do feel like, based on the conversation that you hear at the board meeting, they definitely want it to be a used space, and I would not anticipate that this is expected to deter people from using the space.
Passing of this would go into effect January 1st of 2022, and anyone that would have booked in 2021 would still be at the existing rate. So it would be advance notice. And if you're not feeling comfortable, if you want to table this, the information is available from the Arts Commission minutes. We can give you some time to digest that.
Well, I trust their judgment. I'm not questioning their judgment. I'm only just express the concern that we want to make sure that it gets used. I believe they've researched it, but I don't really think we should hold it up.
Okay.
And again, I would look at it as one that if we do see a drop in it, next year, we're absolutely going to revisit it
Well, we can
come
revisit
budgeting
it
time,
anytime.
and that's exactly right.
We do not have to wait to the end of the year to make adjustments either.
Sure.
So that's one reason they wanted to get this out there, though, is so they can notify the public ahead of time. And then if we're not running it, we have to make some adjustments. You're right.
We got a first and a second.
We have a first and a second. I have a first from Paul and a second from John. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think we're through all the ordinances. And now we're into the gas contractor's license. So we have to do each of them separately, I imagine, Renee, or do we do them together?
Well, I would do them separately in case you,
So the first one is Stephen Payne. And the applicant expects to work for J.E. Shekel.
I'll make a motion to approve the gas contractor's license for Stephen Payne, the second of J.E. Shekel of Evansville, who scored an 88% on the test.
Nancy made a motion.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Dave. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and then the next one is for Gary Jeffers. And it's, I think it's Gamp Plumbing Service?
Gary's.
Gary's Plumbing Service, Gary Jeff. Thank you. Gary's Plumbing Service, so, and he scored 82%. So could I have a motion to approve Gary Jeffers?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Dave. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Paul.
Second from Paul. Further discussion?
I assume they passed the critical questions. We don't have the farm in front of us on these, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming they passed the critical ones, otherwise it wouldn't be here.
Yeah, Tim would make sure they did that before he approved going to us. So, yeah, it's an assumption I think I feel pretty comfortable with. So I have a motion from Dave and a second from Paul. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
yeah.
For information only, speed limits, you want to talk about speed limits in hospital zone?
Do I want to talk about it?
Yeah, job for information only.
I think I sent you a little bit of information in the memo, the monthly memo. Essentially, we're we're taking hospital zones and school zones and making those 25 miles per hour. There were, I think, 3 different streets identified in our city that had been reduced to 20 miles per hour for years and years. So we sat down with the safety committee and they all agreed that that's probably not practical. So those areas are all going to be 25 miles per hour. We also looked at 47th Street and cleaned up the language with respect to this, where 47th Street is within the city of Jasper. And then Portersville Road, we cleaned that up now that we have all of the crosswalks and the stop signs and everything in place. And then last, we looked at St. Charles Street, and I think that is remaining as is.
7th Street is, with our city, we're moving out that way so much further now. The traffic out there is way greater than it's ever been, especially with all the houses built out there. Should we be appealing to NDOT to put a stoplight out on the highway there? Because our city's extended out that far, and I don't know, I hope we never have a crash there but they're going 45, 50 miles an hour.
There just was one. I just went through the intersection at 47th and 231 this past week, and there was a crash there.
And
I tell you what, I got to raise my hand then and say we should be talking to NDOT, because it's changed. Before it didn't matter. There wasn't hardly any houses out there. You know, it stopped before 47th, but now you've got, I don't even know how many houses are out there, but seems like there's 40, 50.
Properties right there on that corner.
47th Street is a strategic artery going east and west.
Yeah.
Essentially all the way to 56.
We do have that meeting coming up.
Do we have one coming up? Could you bring it up?
Sure.
appreciate that, because I worry about that, and if you saw an accident.
And no matter where, if the Mid-States corridor goes through, where it goes through, 47th Street is strategic. So I think it's important that.
In my experience, I've just tried to pull out on there to head north, and boy, you got to really be careful, because some of them might be going 60, and some, if you pull out and then they're.
People get impatient because so many people turn left to go west on 47th Street. When you're sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, then they get impatient and take chances.
Stoplight would help.
Well, I think in light of that also, with the Mill Street extension, people come that direction a lot too, so.
Yep. And those are all prioritizations that we had in our transportation.
When you meet with NDOT, would you be able to give us some feedback on that?
Sure.
What they say or whatever? I appreciate that.
Another topic here for information only, the opioid litigation.
Yeah, so they've identified another defendant for litigation purposes that had not been included in the original lawsuit, and they recommended the cities that were involved in the original litigation go forward with litigation against that defendant. And then just the ongoing saga between local communities and the Attorney General's office, and things really changed as far as that's concerned.
Sports Aquatic Center, we had a meeting this week with stakeholders, and things are moving forward in defining the needs and how those needs can be met collaboratively. So trying to scale it down as tight as you can. I thought it was a very productive meeting, and there'll be some more information coming. We hope to have conceptual drawings and at least concept of what it's going to take to do this facility in December, by the end of the year.
Who's our consultant? Hafer, okay.
We've got a good history with Hafer.
Yeah.
And is it still felt that the property by the armory and the swimming pool is a large enough piece of property to do this project?
It is close. So
Isn't it right at 10 acres, you said?
it's about 10.4 acres, and I think we'll end up, we'll see how the footprint looks.
And including, nothing's set in stone, but like where the horseshoe pits are, or the volleyball, the sand volleyball, even that area?
Well, that's not currently owned by the city.
That wasn't included.
But
we've really looked at the entire area, focusing on what we own and what the national or the state owns.
So the volleyball is not even included in that 10 acres.
Right.
And the idea is that they will come up with a concept and tell us that it is possible to fit it, it is not possible to fit it, and a high-level cost estimate.
I would submit that everything's on the table, and how big that table needs to be is dependent upon what gets cut out of it. So could everything fit on there right now? Probably not, because we've got everything there.
And it wouldn't fit in one level, but
No.
levels too.
The once we pare it down, though, that's where we'll be.
It'd be less expensive to go to a second level, I would think.
Always been told that.
Everything's on the table, right?
Everything's on the table at this point.
If we need a leaf for the table, we'll find out.
Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Tom. And Muni Code?
Yes, that's very close to being complete. We've got the draft. We are about 3/4 of the way done with the proof, just at the formatting and going, just paging through it. So the hope is that by the end of October, it will be live online. And after it's live online, this doesn't seem, it seems counterintuitive, but once it's up and we've made all the changes, they've made all the changes that we've identified, then we will undergo their legal review. and make sure that that going forward, we're crafting things the way that we need to, and so people will at least be able to be using it at the end of October.
Any other questions from the council? Tried to update you on some.
Renee, the Muni code is, if the way I understand it, they can do single word search to find the ordinance that pertains to what they're researching. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good.
I think it's going to be extremely handy for citizens.
Truthfully, the best thing I think, for everyone, whether it's staff, community, vendors that work for us, is that it will be updated in real time. So every month, we'll send any new ordinances, and within the following month, those should be included in the. So rather than have an up-to-date version never, we should have one monthly.
That'd be nice.
Yep. Yep.
Mayor, I was wondering concerning what Amy was here for, possible redistricting. Do we need to form like a small committee to address that, or how is that handled with?
Because I've not done it before, but I'll have to look into it.
I mean, just looking at the sheet, Dave's going to have to grow 400 where it comes from. You said all these tracks have their own.
It's done by census blocks.
Yeah. So that's all on that map, you said.
As far as how the county, I don't know if you're looking for my input, the county, the commissioners are in charge of it for the county level, and they had the choice to form a committee or not, and they were fed information. I was given information from the election division that I shared with them the statutes of what the rules are, and they made a decision based on that. So I think when I went to the city of Huntingburg, they said they were going to form a committee. I don't know who that will consist of. You may have to read the code and see what the direction Nancy will go.
At this point, I don't know what steps to take, so.
Now, Nancy, I just attended the AIM Idea Summit. That was one of the sessions that I attended, was redistricting. And as far as best practices go, they had made the suggestion that we form a task force. And that it's not simply all city council persons. So that might be.
Well, how much changes are we looking at? Is there more than one? A lot of changes?
Well, it would have to be. I'm about 500.
Okay.
My district's 528 over, and Dave is.
To get it within 10%, you know, Dave has to go up 400.
2%.
But you know,
People per meal?
one thing with your district though, Chad, it's going to grow. So if you look ahead 10 years from now, we could take it from yours now, put it to mine, and then I'm out in Holy Family pretty far now.
Yeah.
I mean, what we call the east side. Well, you're going to have to get more.
At least maybe just a task force to at least start the process and start looking at the map and the census tracts and some of those numbers.
It might be a good idea to just check and see how we did it the last time.
Right.
So does it go by,
The last time. Yeah.
District 2's always been the butcher block, I'm going to tell you that. When I first ran, I was on the other side of 56 and everything, so.
does it go by how many people voted, or is it just a
It
number?
goes by the census number.
By the census number, okay. I haven't
So we'll
read any of that.
come up with a suggested plan, present it to council, and then move forward.
I'd be willing to sit on a task force if need be.
Yeah, this was changed a few years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Mayor, if there's no other business, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn from Nancy.
I'll second.
I have a second from Kevin. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.